A millionaire stepped out of his luxury car, ready to attend a prestigious gala, until he saw a homeless woman with 2 kids begging on the street. But when their eyes met, his entire world shattered. Because she wasn't just any stranger. She was the woman he once loved. What happened next will leave you speechless, as this story uncovers the heartbreaking truth of how she ended up there, and the decision that changed both their lives forever. The night was supposed to be perfect. Nathan Carter, a self-made millionaire, had everything lined up. An exclusive charity gala, a room full of powerful elites, and a speech that would solidify his image as a man of generosity. Cameras flashed as he stepped out of his sleek black limousine, adjusting his perfectly tailored Armani suit. But just as he strode toward the grand entrance, something stopped him cold. A frail woman with 2 small children sat on the sidewalk just beyond the glow of the event lights. Her head was bowed, strands of matted brown hair covering her face, a cardboard sign clutched between trembling fingers. The children, a boy and a girl, huddled beside her, their thin jackets doing little to shield them from the cold. Something about her sent a chill down Nathan's spine. He shouldn't care, it wasn't his problem, and yet his feet refused to move. The woman lifted her head for a brief moment, just enough for Nathan to see her face. His heart stopped. For a second it felt like the entire world blurred into silence. He knew those eyes. No, it couldn't be. But it was. Emma, the woman he had once loved more than anything. His breath hitched as 1,000 memories slammed into him all at once. Emma with her infectious laugh. Emma with the wild dreams they once shared. Emma who had believed in him when no one else did. And now she was here, on the street, with 2 kids. A sharp pang of guilt twisted in his gut. What had happened to her? Did she know who he was? Nathan took a step forward, but before he could speak, Emma turned away, pulling her children closer as if shielding them from the world. His chest tightened. Did she not recognize him? Or worse, did she? The irony burned. Inside the gala, men in tuxedos and women in shimmering gowns raised their champagne glasses, celebrating philanthropy, while just outside, the woman who once meant everything to him sat in the cold, ignored by the very people claiming to change the world. Nathan felt sick, but he couldn't walk away, not this time. Whatever had happened between them, Emma deserved more than this. He turned back one last time, just as the little girl lifted her gaze and locked eyes with him. And in that moment, Nathan felt his entire world shift. Because the girl, she had his mother's eyes. Nathan couldn't move. The weight of the moment pressed down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Emma. Here. Like this. And that little girl. Those eyes. A familiar voice snapped him out of his trance. "Mr. Carter, we need to head inside. They're waiting for your speech." Nathan turned slightly, barely registering his assistant's words. He looked back at Emma, her thin, trembling frame, the way she clutched her children protectively. He should walk away. This wasn't his concern, but his past refused to let him go. Emma had been his everything. Back then, Nathan wasn't a millionaire. He was just a small-town boy with big dreams and barely enough money to buy dinner. And Emma Hayes? She had been his partner in crime, his best friend, and the only person who had ever truly believed in him. They met in college, 2 struggling kids trying to make something of themselves. Nathan was always talking about business ideas, always convinced that someday he would be somebody. Emma had laughed at his crazy ideas, but she never doubted him. "I don't care if you become a billionaire or stay broke forever," she had told him once, leaning against his shoulder under a street lamp. "I just want you to be happy." And for a while he was. They scraped by together, working late shifts, sharing instant noodles, dreaming of a better future. But then an opportunity came knocking. A wealthy investor saw potential in Nathan's ideas, a chance to work in the city, to build an empire. It was everything he had wanted, except it meant leaving Emma behind. She had told him she would wait. She had believed in them. But distance has a way of breaking even the strongest bonds. At first, he called every night, then once a week, then once a month, until one day he just stopped calling. Emma never reached out either. Maybe she had realized it before he did, that he had chosen success over love. That was the last time he had seen her. Until now. Nathan's hands curled into fists. 10 years. And now she was begging on the street? How had this happened? He took a step toward her, his heart hammering. Emma. She froze. Slowly she turned, and this time her eyes met his. The moment stretched between them, thick with unspoken words, memories too painful to revisit. Recognition flickered in her eyes, but instead of shock, instead of relief, there was only pain. She looked away first. Nathan's stomach dropped. Emma did recognize him, and she didn't want him here. Before he could say another word, she grabbed the kid's hands and turned to leave. Panic surged through him. Emma, wait! But she was already walking away, faster, desperate. Nathan wasn't letting her disappear again. He followed her. Emma, stop! Talk to me! She whirled around, her face twisted with something between anger and disbelief. Talk to you? Her voice was hoarse, raw. You don't get to do this, Nathan. The kids clung to her, their eyes wide with confusion. Nathan's throat tightened. What happened to you? His gaze flickered to the children. Are they? Emma's jaw clenched. Don't! The word cut through him like a blade. She shook her head. You don't get to walk back into my life and act like you care, not after... She stopped, biting her lip as if the words physically hurt. Nathan felt sick. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. But before he could respond, Emma turned her back to him again. And this time, she didn't stop. Nathan stood there frozen, watching her disappear into the night. For the first time in years, he felt completely powerless. And somehow, he knew this wasn't over. Nathan couldn't sleep that night. His penthouse apartment, usually a sanctuary of luxury and calm, felt suffocating. The city lights blinked through his floor-to-ceiling windows, but all he could see was Emma's hollow eyes, the two children clinging to her. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, hoping it would quiet the storm inside his head. Who were those kids? Was one of them his? The thought twisted in his chest like a knife. The next morning he was back on that same street. Emma was gone. Determined not to let her slip away again, Nathan started asking around. Local vendors, street performers, even the doorman at the nearby hotel. He needed to know what had happened to the woman he once loved. A street vendor, an elderly man with kind eyes, finally gave him a lead. She comes by every few days, usually around dusk, tries to find some work, but... The man's voice trailed off, sympathy lining his face. She's been through a lot. That evening, Nathan waited. As the sun dipped below the city skyline, his heart raced every time someone approached, and then, just as he was about to give up, he saw her. Emma, clutching the hands of her children, her head down. He approached cautiously this time. Emma, please, I just want to talk. She stopped, her shoulders tense, but she didn't turn around. Why? Her voice was barely audible. Because I need to understand. I need to know what happened. She turned, her gaze piercing through him. What happened? You happened, Nathan. Her words were laced with bitterness. You left, and I didn't have the luxury of forgetting. He flinched but forced himself to stay. Let me help. Whatever you need. Emma laughed, a harsh, empty sound. Money? You think that'll fix everything? She glanced at her children, then back at him. Some things can't be bought. Then tell me what can be done. His voice cracked, revealing the desperation beneath his polished exterior. Emma looked at him, truly looked at him, and for a moment, Nathan saw the flicker of the girl he once knew. But then the walls came back up. I don't need anything from you. We'll manage. And with that she walked away, the children trailing behind. Nathan felt a heaviness settle over him. What had he done? Determined not to give up, Nathan hired a private investigator. It felt intrusive, but he needed answers. Days later, the report arrived. Emma's life unfolded before him in brutal clarity. After he left, she had struggled to make ends meet. Jobs were scarce, and without his support, she had turned to waitressing to survive. She fell in love with a man named David, a charming but deeply flawed individual who promised her the world but delivered nothing but heartache. David had been abusive. The report detailed police records, hospital visits, and finally, the day he left her, penniless and with 2 children to care for. Emma had tried to get help, but the system failed her. Shelters were overcrowded, jobs were impossible to find without references, and friends had drifted away over the years. Nathan's hands shook as he read. All this time, while he was building an empire, Emma was fighting to survive. Unable to sit idly by, Nathan visited the shelter where Emma and her kids sometimes stayed. The staff knew her well, but their expressions were guarded when he mentioned her name. "She's proud," the shelter manager said, "never asks for more than what she needs." "Why didn't anyone help her?" Nathan's voice was tight with anger and guilt. "Help?" The manager sighed. "Help is complicated. People think throwing money at a problem solves it, but what Emma needed was a community, support, and a chance. That's harder to find." The words stung. Nathan had built his success on the idea that money could solve anything. But here, in this small, dimly lit office, he realized how wrong he had been. Determined to make things right, Nathan began volunteering at the shelter, hoping to earn Emma's trust. He spent evenings there, serving meals, listening to stories, and slowly, piece by piece, he began to understand the world Emma had been thrust into. One evening, as he was leaving, he saw Emma sitting outside, watching her children play in the parking lot. He approached, his footsteps soft against the pavement. "Emma?" She looked up, surprised to see him there. "Still trying to fix things?" I want to understand, and if I can help, I will." Emma's gaze softened just a fraction. "You think you can fix everything with your money and influence, but some things are beyond fixing." Nathan swallowed hard. "Maybe I can't fix the past, but I can try to make the future better." For a moment, there was silence. Then Emma sighed. "Why now, Nathan? Why, after all these years?" He hesitated. "Because I was blind to everything but myself, and seeing you like this, it made me see everything I ignored." She didn't respond, but she didn't walk away either. That, Nathan realized, was a start. As weeks turned into months, Nathan continued to show up. Slowly, he saw Emma's defenses begin to crumble. She allowed him small glimpses into her life, how she taught her children to be strong, to find joy in little things, to keep hoping even when the world seemed against them. One evening, Emma finally opened up. "When you left, I thought I'd be okay. I thought I was strong enough. But the world isn't kind to people like me, Nathan." Her voice broke and she looked away. "David was a mistake. I thought he loved me, but love doesn't leave you broken." Nathan's heart ached. "Emma, I'm so sorry. For everything." She nodded, her eyes distant. "I survived. That's all that matters now." But Nathan knew survival wasn't enough. He wanted her to live again, to dream again. Nathan had built his empire by solving problems, by breaking obstacles with relentless determination. But Emma wasn't a business deal. She was a wound he had left open for 10 years. And wounds don't heal overnight. Nathan thought offering Emma a house would be the solution. A comfortable place, safe for her children, with enough space to breathe. So he arranged everything. The paperwork, the keys, even a stocked fridge. It was his way of making things right. But when he presented it to her, expecting relief, expecting gratitude, he got rage. Emma's hands shook as she stared at the house key in his palm. "You think this is what I need?" Her voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous in it. "I just want to help. Nathan said carefully. Emma laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Help? No, Nathan. You want to erase your guilt. That's what this is about. Nathan stiffened. That's not true. Then tell me, she shot back. Why didn't you help when I actually needed it? Silence. Nathan felt it like a punch to the gut. Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. You can't just throw money at a problem and expect it to go away. My life isn't something you can fix. She looked down at the kids playing near the shelter, their laughter filling the air. They need stability, a place that's earned, not given, because if it's given, it can be taken away just as easily. Nathan swallowed the lump in his throat. He had failed. Again. Nathan spent the next few weeks watching, learning. Emma worked shifts whenever she could, but no one wanted to hire a woman with 2 kids and no stable address. She lined up for food donations. She taught her kids to smile through their hunger, and she never once asked for more than she was given. She didn't need a handout. She needed a chance. So, Nathan changed his strategy. Instead of giving, he started building. He invested in the community shelters, not just with money, but with job programs, childcare centers, education initiatives. He worked alongside volunteers, showing up daily, getting his hands dirty. People noticed, and so did Emma. One afternoon, Nathan found Emma sitting by the shelter's playground, watching her kids on the swings. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked, not looking at him. He hesitated. He could lie. He could say it was just for the community, but he owed her the truth. "Because I failed you," he admitted, "and because I know now that I can't fix everything. But I can make things better. For you, for them, for others like you." Emma exhaled slowly. For the first time, she didn't fight him, but she still wasn't ready to trust him. Just when things seemed to be shifting, disaster struck. Nathan's involvement in the shelters became public news. Headlines blared, "Millionaire Nathan Carter uses charity to clean his reputation." Emma's face was plastered in tabloids, her kids blurred out but still exploited in the media storm. The damage was done. Emma stormed into his office, slamming a newspaper onto his desk. "You said this wasn't about you?" Her voice was shaking with fury. Nathan felt sick. "Emma, I had nothing to do with this. I never called the press." She clenched her fists. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I finally started to feel like we had a future, and now people are looking at me like I'm some pity case you rescued?" Her eyes burned with unshed tears. "My kids deserve privacy. They deserve dignity, and you just took that from them." Nathan's chest ached. "Emma, please let me fix this." "No." She stepped back. "This was a mistake." And just like that, she walked away. Nathan felt the weight of his failure crush him. He had promised to make things better, but he had only made them worse. Nathan disappeared from the public eye for weeks. Emma expected him to move on, to return to his perfect world. But he didn't. Instead, he worked silently behind the scenes. He pulled every string he had to get the tabloids to retract their stories, to erase every trace of Emma and her kids from the news. And then, one day, the shelter director approached Emma with an offer. "There's a new program," she said, "helping single mothers get stable housing through work placement. Not charity, employment." Emma frowned. "And?" The woman smiled. "Nathan Carter has nothing to do with it. No media, no publicity." She handed her a file. "It's just a chance, a real one." Emma stared at the paperwork, her heart pounding. She wanted to believe it, but could she? Nathan was packing up his office when the door creaked open. Emma stepped inside. He froze. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, she sighed. "I took the job." Nathan exhaled, relief washing over him. "I'm glad." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in years her eyes weren't full of anger. "I don't forgive you, Nathan." Her voice was quiet but firm. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." His heart sank, but he nodded. He had expected that. But she hesitated. I see now that you're trying, and that means something. A small, fragile peace settled between them. Nathan would never get Emma back the way he once had her. But he had done something greater. He had earned back her respect. And that, somehow, felt like enough. Months later, Nathan attended a community event at one of the shelters he had helped rebuild. From a distance, he saw Emma, dressed in work attire, laughing with other women who had once been in her position. Her kids ran around, carefree and happy. Nathan felt a lump rise in his throat. She still hadn't fully forgiven him, but she didn't need saving anymore. And for the first time in a decade, Nathan Carter finally felt at peace. Nathan Carter walked away from the shelter that day knowing one thing: some mistakes can't be undone, but they can be redeemed. He didn't get Emma back, but he helped her get something far more important: her dignity, her future, and a life she could call her own. Sometimes the best way to make things right isn't by looking backward, but by changing what lies ahead. What do you think? Can people truly change? Can the past ever be forgiven? Let us know in the comments. And if you loved this story, hit the like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and click the screen to watch another one that will move your heart.